want to know what Nick brought to the table for Unread, because it's a surprise week, and you know I'm itching to know where you're coming from, brother. Where you coming from?
Well, I'm coming from our recent conversations on Clubhouse, with our sex series, but more so the last conversation that we had discussing over sex and under love. So I decided to roll with the theme of love, since that was on my mind, and I had this book on my shelf that is a completely unread. I haven't read it yet, haven't opened it. I read the title. I may or may not have read the description of it, but it is a absolutely 100% completely unread for me. It's not an obscure book. It is coming from a New York Times best-selling author, so it might be known to some of you out there, listening. This is also a book, another gifted book from my friend Jameer. Shout outs to her once again. She might have sent those two together from the last episode with the instruction, and then this one. So in the same vein of this topic of love, my offering for this episode, hopefully it doesn't wash out in my virtual background, but I can share the screen if it does. But my offering for this episode is, see, it's trying to wash out. It's trying to wash out a little.
It's trying to wash it out.
All right, there we go. The eight rules of love by Jay Shetty. Subtitle: How to Find It, Keep It, Let It Go.
Ooh.
Yep. 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty.
All right, y'all. Let's hear it, Mr. Westbrooks. What you got for us?
Yep. On the top, claims #1 New York Times best-selling author. All right, so it says this is the same author who wrote Think Like a Monk. So that one is the #1 New York Times bestseller book. So it says the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller Think Like a Monk offers a revelatory guide to every stage of romance, drawing on ancient wisdom and new science. Okay. So the description goes as follows. Nobody sits us down and teaches us how to love. So we're often thrown into relationships with nothing but romantic movies and pop culture to help us muddle through until now. Instead of presenting love as an ethereal concept or a collection of cliches, Jay Shetty lays out specific actionable steps to help you develop the skills to practice and nurture love better than ever before. He shares insights on how to win or lose together, how to define love, and why you don't break in a breakup. Inspired by Vedic wisdom and modern science, he tackles the entire relationship cycle from first dates to moving in together to breaking up and starting over. And he shows us how to avoid falling for false promises and unfulfilling partners. By living Jay Shetty's 8 rules, we can all love ourselves, our partner, and the world better than we ever thought possible. So let's see what the 8 rules are. And then, so we see what the 8 rules are, give an overview to that, learn a little bit more about the author, and then I'll pass it on. So looking at the table of contents, this book is broken up into 4 parts. Part 1 is called Solitude. Part 2 is called Compatibility. Part 3 is called Healing. And Part 4 is called Connection. Now, the rules are the titles of the chapters. So I'll just list off the 8 rules, which are the 8 chapters, and share what else is included in here. And I'll close off with sharing some additional information about the author. So under part 1 of Solitude, you have rules 1 and 2. Rule #1 is let yourself be alone. Rule #2 is don't ignore your karma. And after those 2 rules, and it looks like after each part, at the end of each part, there's a love letter and there's a meditation. So at the end of part 1, which is solitude, under rule 1 and 2, let yourself be alone and don't ignore your karma. There's a love letter to yourself and a meditation for solitude. Now, in the part 2, compatibility, you have rules 3 through 5. Rule number 3, define love before you think it, feel it, or say it. Rule number 4, your partner is your guru. Rule number 5, purpose comes first. And then this one is a love letter to your partner. As on the part 1, it was a love letter to yourself. Part 2 is a love letter to your partner. And under part 1, the meditation was for solitude. This meditation is for compatibility. Now, in the part 3, healing, you have rules 6 and 7, which are rule number 6, win or lose together. Rule 7, don't break in the breakup. And the love letter to help you heal, followed by the meditation to heal through love. And under part 4, connection, you have rule number 8, love again and again, love letter to the world, and meditation to connect. Okay. And the book includes, of course, the usual parts, the acknowledgments, the author's notes. You have some notes back here as well, some footnotes from different research and sources, lots of footnotes. And then there's a section for next steps, which I would assume would be what someone who's read this book, what they can do after they completed reading the book and started to put into action the tips that the book puts forth. And just some information about the author. Like I mentioned, Jay Shetty is a #1 New York Times bestseller, award-winning storyteller. He's also a podcast host, a former monk dedicated to helping people train their minds for peace and purpose every day. In 2017, Forbes named him to their 30 under 30 list for his game-changing impact in media. His viral videos have been viewed more than 10 billion times, and he is followed by over 50 million people across social media. In 2019, Jay created On Purpose, now the world's #1 health and wellness podcast. He's been a keynote speaker around the world, invited to Google, Microsoft, Netflix, and American Express, among many others. Over 2 million people have attended his online school, and his genius coaching community provides weekly programming on health and wellness to thousands of members in over 100 countries. Jay is the Chief Purpose Officer at Calm and co-founded Joyo Tea with his wife, Radhi. And that's the author right there, Jay Shetty. And this is another one I'm excited to get into and read. And being that it sounds very practical, it sounds like a tool that I can use in my love journey, as I spent considerable amount of time, especially on that first part with the solitude. I spend most of my life in solitude when it comes to romantic love. So I plan on taking an inventory on that, to make sure I'm on the right track in terms of that, and then proceed forward with the compatibility aspects of it. And I guess preparing myself for hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. And this book kind of sounds like you can use it almost like a reference too. You can go to the section of the book that is most applicable to you and put into action the tools that are in here. But for a lot of us, a lot of people out here who need the foundation and may have jumped around from parts 1 to part 4 in their journeys, whether it was in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. You know, a lot of people might have to go back and read this book from cover to cover and start from the foundation and work their way through it. You know, some people jump to the compatibility part, you know, before they learn the solitude part. Some people might have experienced the breakup before they experience the solitude and the true compatibility. Some people may have stopped at the breakup part or the healing part and haven't transcended to the connection part yet. So I feel that there's probably something for everyone in here, regardless of their background, their experiences, their relationship status, single, in a relationship, married, divorced, whatever it may be. This book really sounds like there is something for anyone, everyone in here, like I said, regardless of experiences, relationship status, race, color, creed, background. We know that love is, you know, transcends all of those things. And it makes me think about the lessons too, going back to the lessons, going back to the supreme alphabet, where we go to the letter L. Love is the highest elevation of human understanding and compassion. So we're dealing with an energy that is the highest, probably the highest vibration, the highest elevation of, like I said, understanding, human compassion, and things of that nature. So that is my offering for this episode, 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty. How to find it, keep it, and let it go.
Well, you never cease to, you know, bring the energy, man. I'm loving it. And for those of you who don't know, for the past month or so, we've been doing on Clubhouse a series on sex. And our last topic was oversexed and underloved. Unfortunately, it didn't record, so that was weird, but nonetheless, you can join us for our next conversation next Thursday in the spot. Not going to give away the title to that one yet, but be in the spot because we be blowing it up. You know what I'm saying? But that book, Mr. Westbrook, sounds amazing. You know, when you first read the table of contents, I was saying to myself, solitude first makes sense. That's what I thought about, because I thought about, as you read the different chapters, you could see why solitude is so important before the breakup, before the couple, before any of that. Because if you can't do the solitude, the breakup will break you. You know what I mean? And so I agree that, you know, you definitely can use this type of work at any stage. The other thing that surprised me about this book, with this author, is I've been in the health and wellness field for 25 years, 26 years, something like that. Never heard of this guy, but it sounds like he do amazing work, and, you know, and has a large following in the health and wellness field. So the fact that I've never heard of him, y'all, this is why we do these talks, not just with you guys, but with each other, because we can't read everything, even though we try. Damn it, we will try to read it all. That's why we got so many unread books. But nonetheless, this is why we share these things, because, you know, many times when you share, you know, the latter benefits better than the former. You know, there's a saying about that in Islam. You know, you learn something, you share it, for the latter may understand it better than the former, you know, or be able to use it or utilize it. And if you ever notice, a lot of times when you are going through something, what you need comes to you right away. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. people think this always means a person. Sometimes it could just be a manuscript, a book, you know, to tell you, hey, look at yourself, you know, or look at these things. You know, my question to you would be, one of the first things you read was nobody sits us down and talks to us about love at any point. Can you share with us, for you, you said, you know, solitude is the part that you've done, you know, for a long time, and you were comfortable in that space. Did in that solitude space you learn what love was, or shape and mold the space for what love is or looks like? Or did you have to wait till you got into the situation and try to figure it out from there, since nobody really gives us a foundation or a background?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would say it's probably been a combination of both, and experience as well as observation, observing what now. Well, actually, let me backtrack. I won't say that. All right, so no one sits us down and talks to us about this in a very formal type of sense. Like, here, let's sit down, and let's talk about love. We a lot of us end up being taught about it in indirect ways. You know, whether we're, like I said, through observation, we're observing people we might know. We might observe our parents. We might observe, other people that are in our vicinity or organizations. We might observe media. We might observe music. We might listen. We listen to love songs. Especially our elders. The love songs from back in their day. So these are all areas where I've heard about love and kind of picked up on love. Now the tricky part is your, I guess, your mental outlook or your attitude towards the subject. Because if you're only shown one aspect of love, whether it's positive or negative, it can skew your reality of what love is and what love isn't. So I could say, thankfully, I've been exposed to a variety of depictions and instances and experiences, whether directly or indirectly, of what love looks like, or how love has been depicted, or how it's been perceived. And love is just such a broad topic, a broad subject. And if you line up 10 people and ask them to define love, it's very likely you'll get 10 different responses. You might find some similarities, across the board, but from person to person, it can vary, especially when you get into like the very small nuances. Of course, I would say there are some very obvious things, like if someone is beating you down or abusing you, then that's, some people might call that love, but they're definitely not calling it love in the positive sense of it. So that brings me to this idea that love can be a neutral concept when you really think about it. Because how can we tell someone that them being abused is not love? Maybe it is love, but just not a healthy love. Maybe it's a toxic love or an unhealthy love. So that's something that I'm curious about in this book, of how he defines love, and does he see it as a neutral term that we just kind of characterize into subcategories. But I'm going like the long, long-winded answer, but I would say the short to the long of it is that yeah, it's been a combination of my own reflections, but just based on what I've been exposed to, whether directly, indirectly, real or imagined, fictional or non-fictional, all of those played as factors into how I define it for myself.
Well, let me just say, I don't mind along with the answer, and I don't think our audience do either, because you made some very great points, and I think points that all of us can resonate with at some particular point. I really had to smile when you talked about how, the things we're exposed to give you this framework or idea of what love looked like, and depending on who your parents were and what their relationships like, and the things that they promoted or either believed in themselves or did themselves, actually does have a reflection on the way that we view love. I'll give you a funny story, and I tell everybody this story because when I really realized that I didn't know what love was for real, it was like, oh, it wasn't like this fairy tale that I was sold, So, when I was young, listened to a lot of Motown, Blue Magic, Stylistics, Delphonics, the Dramatics, the Supremes, you know what I'm saying? Walking in the rain with the one I love, you know what I'm saying? Life is a 3-ring circus, Chocolate Girl, and Daddy's Home, and all these different songs. I remember in my very first, because I got married right out of high school. So I was still a child, but I remember the reality of this is not what that song said. I was like, wait a minute, where's all the whispers, make love to the sun come up, and gentle caresses and kisses down your back. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, this is not what I signed up for, son. You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought I was getting that. And, and it's so funny because, not getting married right out of high school, what it didn't allow for was that time of solitude, because you figure you go from being in your parents' house straight into your husband's house or to your wife's house. So when that's the case, you only repeat what you just saw. And if you saw things that were unhealthy, because you have no other framework and you haven't had any time to sit and discern for yourself what it's shaped and looked like, you're going to repeat what you just saw. And trust me, mine was toxic. And it took me some time to realize that I wasn't even, I wasn't the one so much, I don't want to say doing, because I don't want it to sound like I'm pointing fingers. I didn't know what toxic looked like. Put it like that. I thought, like you said, oh, it's natural for the man to yell at the lady, or, oh, you're supposed to do this particular thing because that's how that go. And this is how you prove you love somebody. You know what I'm saying? And I was raised in that generation where you don't leave nobody no matter what they do. No matter what they do, you got to stay with them because you made a vow and that's what it is. And so I thought that's what love was making this vow and sticking to it, regardless. Whether you was happy or not was not the question. You know what I'm saying? So I love that he goes through that, and I love that he offers those love letters. And I'm almost interested to wonder if that isn't part of one of the other aesthetic practices, because you did say Vedic wisdom, because there's a lot of Vedic wisdom that deals with writing these letters to yourself. You know what I mean? And being able to read out loud, you know what I'm saying, these words that either have hindered us from growth or experiencing what real love is, or jumping in, with all things and falling down and finding out it wasn't what you thought it was. So I think that's fantastic, amazing. And you grew up in a household that your parents are still together. How many years has it been?
Goodness. Let me see. I think it's a quote close about like 30, 37 years, 36, 37 years, something like that.
That take work, y'all. For all y'all who can't stay in a relationship 37 days, 37 years. I remember somebody saying that to me one time. Their parents had been married like 45 years. I said, man, sometimes I can't imagine liking somebody for 45 days. You know what I'm saying? Just because in those 45 days, you find out things that's just like, wow, okay, this is above my pay grade. But, the other thing I wanted to ask you about this book and its potential to help the person along their love journey is I'm interested if when he was writing this book, was it more from viewing the world on the outside or from the experiences he had on the inside? And I think that makes a big difference because, one of the things that I was told by an elder at the beginning of my journey when I was 21 years old, they told me that you study and you share what you end up needing the most. You think you be studying it to share it with somebody else. It'd be like, no, this is for you. You need this. You might be sharing it with folks, but this is for you. Don't get it twisted. You know what I mean? Right. And I think that's one of the things that allows me to dive deeper into my books. But that sounds like a great book. And just like the one you offered the last time, I can definitely see how these books can be used for that continuous process of refinement. Because as you said, love is such a broad and amazing and spectacular thing. Nobody can put it in a box and say what it is. Because if you ask some people, they tell you everything is love.
Right.
The world is love. Life is love. And some people just love a pizza. You feel me? Right. And that's legitimate because they can love pizza, but it ain't the same thing as loving a person or a pet or whatever, or just loving life. So I think that, I think the part that I really, really would be interested in is that solitude part of it, because I didn't learn that until much later. And the way that ended up happening for me was you figure you get married right away, you start having children right away. So I never had a dull moment in my house. It was never quiet where I lived. It's always been somebody where I live. And the first time I ever had to just sit alone by myself, I was like, hey, ain't nobody making no noise. Nobody's asking for nothing. And then my mind just said, well, what do you want? Why would you even ask me that? I have no idea what I want. I know what everybody else want. I know what everything else looks like. And the other thing I wanted to bring back to you is, how do you see this book relating to the topic that we talked about in Clubhouse of being oversexed and underloved?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the points that we discussed on Clubhouse was, what was that whole education part of it, that whole sitting down of, discussing, well, I guess in the context of love, sex, but discussing love and what it is, and also how holistic it really is. You said when we were, the main topic was sex, and you said that we're not talking about the physical aspects of sex. We're talking about the spiritual, the emotional aspects of it too. So I think in the same way it relates to love, in that we have to view it holistically, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It all it's all connected. It all matters, and it's all connected. It's all important. So I that's where I see the connection comes into play, and then at the topic of sex when it comes to love. whether sex is love or is it not? You know, how our experiences and even how being, you know, men and being women, how it differs in that sense of how sex relates to love. Whether it's is it an aspect of love itself, or is it love, or is it just a physical, you know, physical activity? Some people see it that way. Obviously in our conversation, it's much deeper than that, but a lot of people just especially men just see it as a physical activity. And I'll say not just men, more and more women are seeing it that way in modern times too, as just a physical activity, and not having any emotional cause, emotional or spiritual causes and effects. So how love relates to sex is definitely a clear connection between this book and our clubhouse conversations.
I absolutely agree. I really resonate with that answer. And I'm thinking about, how when we were having that conversation, we had a very mixed room in terms of age group, which I thought was really important. And I strive to invite everyone. You are welcome. There are no fees. Look, you ain't gotta be, and you ain't gotta be. Just show up. You need an invitation. Get the link from myself, from Nick. We are glad to have you. You know what I mean? And we really do have some thought provoking conversations. And when I'm in making my invitation list, I'm very deliberate to try to invite people from every age group. And I do that because some of us have a very antiquated way of thinking. And I say some of us because I'll say this next thing. I was raised to think that you didn't have sex with anybody you didn't love. So when I was having sex, I'm thinking, well, this is love, And for somebody else, they was like, no, this is sex. And this is like, oh, okay, what does that mean? So does that mean you don't love me? Like, wait, well, why'd you do this if this is only for the people that's in love? I was very naive, like just I was a kid, and many of us are kids when these things start to develop. And so that key opener that you gave, that nobody sits down and talks with us, I have to ask you as an educator, do you see us being able to sit down with our children, with our youth, and talk to them about what real love is, if we can even put a lid on what real love is? Like, how do you even begin a conversation like that with our youth today? Because as you said, it's not just our young men that think the way that they think anymore. I know more women than less that will tell you they will just have relations and they have no use for all the rest of the madness. You know what I mean? So how do you think as an educator we should face this? Because they used to have sex education, but I ain't never remember them having love education.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, they didn't have it. And I that's you reminded me to bring up what we're doing in class currently in one of my courses. Now, I teach an AP literature, advanced placement literature and composition class, and we're currently going through our short fiction, short story unit. And the story that we're actually in the middle of reading, which also reminded me, was a driving force or influence in me picking this book for this episode, is we're reading a short story called What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver, published in 1981. And it's a short story in which you have two couples, a man, a man and a woman, two sets of men and women. They're sitting around the table, drinking some gin and tonics, and they're discussing and they're talking about love. They're talking about their experiences, and they're all coming from a different perspective based on their experiences. So you got one character who was in an abusive relationship, and then you have another character who who's a divorcee and they're going through a co-parenting, their co-parenting struggles. So it's very interesting. So to answer your question, within the educational system, we all have our disciplines. So sex education, that's more of the biological, physical, that's the bare bones of it. It's just discussing it from a biological aspect. I think with my subject, teaching English, and in reading text like this, we incorporate the text into the curriculum. And in this modern age, everything is considered a text, whether it's in print, whether it's audio like music, whether it's video, whether it's a movie, a TV show. These are all things that we analyze, not only for their literary elements, but also for their content and for the perspectives and the point of view. So one of the questions that we'll be discussing with this story, what we talk about when we talk about love, is what is each character's perspective on the topic of love? How do they compare? How are they similar? How are they different? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? So these are the type of conversations or ways that you can start the conversations, especially on that level, working with high school students, because a lot of them are starting to get into relationships and dating and sex and things like that. As a matter of fact, we have a program, it's kind of like an offshoot of the health class, but we have a group of students who are being trained to be peer educators, and they just did a program last week, well, actually earlier this week, about sex, but having those conversations with each other, especially if they're dating or the couples centered about being ready for sex and having clear communication about expectations and being prepared or being not prepared. So you have those disciplines, within within the social studies or the history. I think I brought up the topics of the politics of sex during the clubhouse conversation, and how has it played out in history, and how has it played out in the political sphere with revolutions, feminist movements, sexual revolution. That's where the historical aspect comes into it. So there's ways to implement it or incorporate it into formal education. But of course, we should have conversations with young people outside of the formal setting, because the formal setting doesn't cover every aspect of it. It doesn't necessarily cover the spiritual aspect of it. It might touch on some of the emotional parts of it, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't get deeply enough into the emotional aspects of it. So this is when we have our community partners or our community organizations come in and as guest speakers and talk to the students, or we have our parent teacher organizations where we have the parents and the students come and discuss these topics after school hours. So I think that's a good place to start, by creating those spaces and those opportunities, wherever we can fit them in.
I totally agree, yo. And let me just say, thank you for that, and thank you for what you do. You are a hero. You are a community hero. I tell you that all the time. All my teachers that are listening, men and women, we love you. We appreciate you. We know people will never give you all the flowers you deserve, but trust me, it is not easy, especially in this day and time. And I think it's important that we say that when like you said, when we were talking about sex, we weren't really talking about the physical act of it as much as we were the other aspects and the other things that are affected Even in sex education and talking about it from the biological aspect, they don't talk about the physiological changes that take place in a person once they have sexual relations. So especially when you're young and you haven't even gotten out of puberty yet. So I am a grandma and I have teenage granddaughters. And my son and I were talking one time, and we were talking about how I don't think that I could be a parent today. And what I mean by that is that I look at some of the things they teach in school at such an early age, and I'm not with it. I feel like at a certain age, children shouldn't know certain things. And and I'm not saying that we keep our children ignorant. For all of those who listen, that's not what I'm saying. But I feel like people forget the innocence that goes before being introduced to all of that. Because it's once you're introduced to that, there's no going back. You can't take the innocence back. Once you out there, and the very real things that these young people feel after they've been engaged in some of these, relationships, healthy or unhealthy, goes back to that piece you were talking about with solitude and really, getting to know yourself and what your true view is on love. And not only that, realizing that even if you think you know what love is now, or you have a definition of it now, it most likely will change as you grow. As you grow and as you refine it, as you develop, this is something that should grow. I think this is a fascinating book, Nick. I'll tell y'all like this. We never ever disappoint each other.
We don't.
So y'all just here basically, you know what I'm saying, to either get on with us or just listen to us geek about these books that we just got that we ain't read. Right. And we want to know which ones you haven't read. I want to ask you one last question because I know you like, well, dang. But
no, you good. You good.
One last question because for those of you who don't know, Mr. Westbrooks, my brother Nick, he is the foremost, and I'm gonna say foremost because I'm claiming it, numerologist of our young times right now, one of the up and coming, surely to be scholars, elders at one day, of numerology. Supreme Numerics is his company. And let me let you know, the brother can go in on some numerology. So with that being said, I'm about to ask you, what is the numerology for love?
Oh yeah, me and you, we right here, because that's what I was going to close out with on mine, was because
I told y'all we always connected. We always connected, y'all.
Yes,
that's my brother.
Yep, you already know.
All right, bring it,
it's
bro.
Very, and it's right in alignment with many of the points we brought up and kind of alluded to. And so, just to give a quick crash course with numerology, of course, you could take the numbers of someone's birthday to break down the characteristics and the traits about that person, but we also could take the letters. Each letter in the alphabet has a numerical value, so we're able to break down the meaning and vibrations of words numerically, and those words can tell us vibrations just like the letters in someone's name can tell us characteristics and traits about that person. The letters in a word can give us the vibration of certain words and phrases. And I use two systems of numerology, the Chaldean and the Pythagorean. The Chaldean is the older system of numerology. Pythagorean is the modern system, the newer system, both of which are accurate. But Chaldean, the older system, is a little bit more it's a little bit more accurate, and it's a little bit more mystical and more occult. And it also takes into account the compound meaning of the numbers, while the Pythagorean You can look at the compound meaning of the numbers, but most of the time you look primarily at the base number in which you reduce it to a single digit. As in numerology, we use a phatic system in which we continually add until we reach the single digit. But I look at things holistically, as I've been taught by, one of my teachers, to look at it holistically. So I look at both systems. I look at the compound numbers and the single digit numbers. And what you'll find in the word love is very fascinating. So in the Chaldean system, it adds up to the number 18. And in the Chaldean system, we look at the meaning of the numbers as it relates to the tarot. So in the tarot deck, the number 18 is the moon card. And look at Roo, because Roo know about the tarot. See, I know a little bit about the tarot. I'm not that deep into it, but I know by saying the moon card, she's like, of course it's the moon card. Tied to that intuition and imagination and that mystery. I think I mentioned the ambiguity of love. This is just a reminder that love is ambiguous with that 18, the moon card. And when you reduce it down to a number 9, is going back to what I was saying in the opening about 9 being a highest vibration or highest level of human understanding and compassion. Number 9 represents that high level of humanitarianism, that high level of love and leadership on the positive side. Remember, this duality, this positive and the negative side. But on the negative side, that 9 is connected to Mars. So we talk about war and fighting and violence and things like that, whether it's physical or it's verbal. so it's definitely very much in alignment with how challenging and difficult it is to kind of put love into a box and define it. And also with the moon card, you also have to be aware of that deception too. Love can be deceptive when you get, especially when you allow the emotional part to overpower the logical part. The moon is connected to water, and water is connected to emotions, and the moon is connected to our emotions. Now, love in the Pythagorean system adds up to the number 21, which reduces down to a 3. Now, looking at the compound of the 21, you have the 2 in front of the 1, the 2 representing companionship, representing partnership, teamwork, togetherness. So it's emphasizing the partnership and teamwork aspect of it, but you have the 1 behind it too as a reminder not to lose oneself, not to lose your individuality when you're coming together with another person, and unifying and having that companion. And then when you add 2 plus 1 together, you get the 3. 3 is the number of growth and expansion. So on the positive side, you can grow. I mean, you can grow by yourself when you're in that solitude stage of love. But when you're with someone else, you can grow and expand with someone else. But on the negative side, if love is, issues of love on the negative side can be tied to, gossip, it can be tied to scandal. Oftentimes when we hear about scandals, they relate to love.
Right.
Love or the lack of love.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how I see it, numerically.
Wow, that's so interesting. And Nick and I have been talking, we always trying to bring out the highest quality information and conversations. And we just been talking about how we're gonna have some bonus bills. Because when we start talking, let me let you know, it's so much further that we can go right now. Like I'm
Yep.
sitting here thinking about the numbers, and I'm like, I see how we can build on that. I see how that makes sense. It's just like when you said the moon card. I said, of course it's the moon card. You know what I mean? And there's so many ways that we can continue to go into this and go deeper, and just really connect with our inner teacher. That's what we share in these books for y'all. It's not for y'all to just take our opinions of the books or our summaries of the books and say, oh, well, this is whatever. It just be like, yo, here's some information. This might resonate with you. Check it out. You know what I mean? Some of it you might want, some of it you don't. But it's very important that we continue to do that refinement process. And I really am grateful that you brought this book. And I'm like, right now I could be finished. I feel like I feel like, well, that was a great talk. Now we done now.
It's like we didn't even give y'all rules book yet.
I know. So that's why I'm telling them they gotta join us when we do these bonus bills, because the bonus bills, basically what they're gonna be doing is continuing these conversations, because one of the things that we enjoy are asking questions here, and because we realize questions take you deeper into contemplation and self-reflection and self-refinement, and that's what we are all about. So one final question for you.
And for real this time.
What, if anything, is the one thing you'd like to walk away from this book?
Okay. The one thing I would like to walk away from, man, because I think I kind of alluded to a couple of things when I was discussing the contents, but if I had to narrow it down to one, I guess it would be the second line in that subtitle. So to repeat the entire subtitle, it's called How to Find It, Keep It, and Let It Go. And let it go is interesting, but that's another conversation. That's a whole nother conversation.
That's something else. That's something else.
But keeping it, because I think that relates back to what you were saying about how these marriages have lasted, 30, 40, 50 years. That's where the keep it part is for me. And I think, especially for people of my generation, I think that's the part of it that's, I guess you could say it's the struggle, but it's the fight. We have a lot of people my generation saying that the reason why the older generations lasted so long was because they just dealt with the toxicity. They didn't, like you said, we don't leave under no conditions. So it's like just keeping in mind that just because the marriage stayed together for so long doesn't mean it was a healthy marriage. Right. So I guess the one thing I want to take away is in the sense of the keep it part of this subtitle, not only how to stay together with someone for the longevity, but to stay together and to be a healthy and joyous and happy, companionship.
Yes. I totally agree with you. And I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, by the way. But I will say, that, one of the things I remember telling a group of young ladies that I was working with in Jersey, where I'm from, y'all. Gotta go always go back to my bricks and give back to my bricks. But right. I was talking to a room of young ladies and young mothers, new mothers. And I was, explaining to them that, just because something was done don't mean it was done right, you know? And what's right for one person may not be right for the other. But at the end of the day, anything that is not helping you grow is hindering you or killing you. And that's basically what it is. And you know, we have to remember a lot of people stay married for different reasons, for show, for the children, for the finances, for the whatever. But it'd be a lot of other things that be unhealthy that continue to skew our view of what love is. So I think that, you know, this book could be a great opportunity for people to go in and maybe take a look at what they view as love and start to maybe redefine it or clean it up for themselves, you know, or maybe just add some things that weren't there, you know. So great offering, great offering. Man, like I said, I'm about done now. That was good. Wasn't that good, y'all? Come on, let's give it up for Mr. Westbrook. Show that book one more time, brother. Show that book one more time. Show that book one more. So you gotta put it right, like right up in here because you're gonna
yeah, I'm gonna share it on the screen so you get better.
Yes, y'all. Make sure that if you get this book, let us know, y'all. I appreciate that. We love to hear your thoughts on it. All right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you zoom in on the picture of the author again for the people? Because I don't think they got to see that when
oh yeah, there you go.
When you were showing it in the back.
Is that bigger?
Yeah, that we see his name. We don't see his picture. We see those small over.
The picture. Go over here. Okay, there it is.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So there's the author, y'all. There's the author. And yeah, thank you, Mr. Westbrooks. We will definitely put that on our list. We definitely put that on our list. That's a banger. Now I think I need to take a breath.
Yeah, if you need to get a sip, get a sip of water or something. Sipping my water right now.
No, because you want to know what? Like, I feel like, I guess because we're doing this series on not just sex. This is a mini series, guys. By the way, we are doing a larger series, Unmasking Morality, and in man, how we could tie all of that in right now. That's why I said whole 2-hour bonus video is needed just for this particular topic. So, sitting here and get ready to bring this topic, I'm like, well, it ain't tying the way I thought it was going to tie in, y'all, but it's a good one.
Yeah, I'm curious.
It's a good one. All right. So y'all get it, Mr. Westbrooks, for that numerology. I'm telling y'all, listen, he did some numerology for me on 2-3 occasions, and let me let you know, it was good information. It was good stuff. It helped me more than, like, it kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And when I walked away, he gives you, you can either do a video with him, and you can have that, or you can have a verbal recording, or he can write it out for you. Let me let you know, the brother is thorough. The brother is thorough, y'all. Get your readings, get your work done. Use these tools for your benefit. This is why we share this information.